November 1950. A Greyhound-style bus packed with 33 college football players is grinding its way over Monarch Pass in Colorado. Snow had slicked the pavement, and the brakes were already hot, and then nothing. The driver shouts for the boys to hang on as the bus lurches into the downhill curves. What follows was 17 minutes of controlled chaos. The brakeless bus barreled 23 miles down the pass, hitting speeds over 100 miles per hour. And by a sheer miracle, everyone survived. This story has lived on for generations in Colorado, whispered among truckers and retold in town cafes. And it captures something about a road that has always been beautiful, essential, and unforgiving. To all our professional drivers who suggested we should look west if we want to talk about dangerous mountain passes, here it is. Today we cross the Continental Divide, 11,312 feet. This is Monarch Pass as we go beyond the exit. A road of necessity. For more than a century, Monarch has been a lifeline for miners, ranchers, truckers, and tourists alike. But the original pass was never carved for sightseers. Its first road was born from silver, sweat, and a gamble on a mining boom. In 1880, entrepreneurs Hugh and Sam Boone, backed by prospector Nicholas Creed, built the first wagon toll road across the divide. Their rough track linked the booming Monarch mining district to the Denver and Rio Grande Railroad down in the Arkansas Valley. Every wagon load of ore that rattled toward the town of South Arkansas, later named Salida, owed a toll to the Boone's Gate. The mines were busy. The Madonna mine alone shipped 100 tons of ore a day, much of it slung down the slopes on an aerial tram to meet the road. Mule teams groaned up the grade while freight wagons crept downhill as slow as possible. Settlements like Garfield and Sargent's became staging posts where teams rested and drivers steeled themselves for the climb. The toll road was profitable, but not popular. By the late 1880s, locals had grown tired of the high tolls and poor maintenance. In 1887, Chaffee County bought out the road for about $1,400, making the crossing a public responsibility. From then on, Monarch wasn't just a private venture, it was a public necessity. For 4 decades, the wagon road carried timber, cattle, and ore over the top. It was steep, dangerous, and snowbound most of the year, but it proved something vital. A crossing here was possible. And once automobiles arrived, that possibility became a promise. The Midland Trail and the automobile era. By the early 1900s, wagons were giving way to sputtering engines, and Monarch, rough as it was, found itself drawn into the new dream of cross-country travel. In 1913, promoters stitched together one of America's first transcontinental auto routes, the Midland Trail. Running from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles, it offered adventurous motors a way to cross the Rockies. Monarch was one of its crown jewels. But at the time, the road was still little more than a graded wagon path. Motorists carried tire chains, spare gas cans, and shovels, fully expecting to dig themselves out of the mud or snow. Travel guides advised patience and a strong constitution. Yet Monarch's inclusion on the Midland Trail map was significant. It meant for the first time, the pass wasn't just a local mining road, it was part of a national network. Counties invested in improvements. By 1919, the so-called Rainbow Route Project began grading, draining, and widening the Monarch Road for automobiles. In 1921, a new dirt alignment opened slightly south of the original wagon trail. 6 cars made the inaugural crossing that October, sputtering to the top in a cloud of dust. But even with the upgrades, winter remained the enemy. Until about 1930, Monarch regularly closed for months at a time, isolating Gunnison and Salida. Locals lobbied for better access, knowing that if Monarch could be kept open, it would keep a vital link between their towns. It was still serving the mining districts, but also courting a new kind of traveler, the motorist in search of adventure. Highway drama and the 1930s rebuild. By the 1930s, the dirt road over Monarch was worn thin. Cars were faster, trucks were heavier, and Colorado needed a reliable transcontinental route. The big question was, which pass would carry the newly designated U.S. Highway 50 across the divide? And there were rival passes. Marshall Pass offered a lower crossing. Cochetopa Pass was gentler. Both though, added a lot of distance, and Monarch was higher and harsher, yet more direct. Colorado State Highway engineer Charles D. Vail, and yes, that's the same Vail that Vail, Colorado is named after, firmly believed Monarch could be tamed. In 1938, he pushed for a bold realignment south of the old toll road, cutting a new route through Agate Pass. The design kept grades to a steady 6%, widening curves and the roadway itself. By November 1939, the new highway opened, fully paved, within a year. For a short time, officials even called it Vail Pass, but locals weren't quite happy with that. To them, Monarch had been Monarch since the mining days. Governor Ralph Carr ended up restoring the name before the year was out. The result created one of Colorado's highest and most ambitious mountain highways, a modern artery at over 11,000 feet. For the first time, motorists could crest the Continental Divide on smooth pavement. By the 1940s, Monarch Pass wasn't just a rough mountain track anymore. It was a paved link in America's backbone highway, carrying everything from family sedans to long-haul buses and trucks. The new highway also opened doors for recreation. In 1939, the same year the realignment was finished, locals set up a rope tow that became Monarch Ski Area. And by the 1950s, the summit hosted a Greyhound stop and the Monarch Crest Gift Shop, a place where truckers, servicemen, and vacationers all paused before tackling the descent. But pavement and paint stripes alone weren't enough to tackle Monarch's bite. The grades and the storms that came still remained, and before long the pass would remind everyone that engineering could only go so far. The calamities that changed a nation. And now we return to our original story. On November 18, 1950, a Greyhound-style bus packed with 33 Western State College students, a school that was later renamed Western Colorado State, began its descent from Monarch Pass. The brakes had already been straining on the climb, and then, as they came down the hill, nothing. No matter what he tried, the driver could not get the pedal to respond. For 17 minutes, driver Jerry Tobin fought gravity as the bus rocketed downhill. Curve after curve flashed by a speed topping over 100 miles an hour. Thinking quickly, Tobin had players lean side to side in unison, counterbalancing the weight as they rounded turns, trying to keep the coach from rolling over. Tobin was quoted as saying, "As it was, we didn't do any skidding. The back end tried to get away a couple of times, but I held her under control. I'll admit I was kind of nervous, like I was driving a boxcar full of dynamite through a forest fire." As the road began to level off, Tobin was finally able to get enough pressure in that brake pedal to stop the bus. And believe it or not, the team went on to play their game and win. When Tobin was asked again about what he thought about the whole ordeal, he said simply, "It isn't a ride I'd recommend for tourists." For a very long time, the bus remained in a field near Parlin, Colorado, a rusting reminder of a ride that should have ended in tragedy, but thankfully didn't. Unfortunately, not every story on Monarch had a happy ending. On September 11, 1971, the Gunnison High School JV football team was on board a bus making its way down the pass when its brakes failed, causing the coach to veer out of control. The bus rolled 2.5 times before slamming roof first into the ground. The metal sides split open and the roof collapsed down to the seat level. Reports from on board described an acrid smell of burning brakes, the grinding of gears, and then, suddenly, silent as the 2-speed rear axle slipped to neutral. 9 lives were lost that day, and over 20 were wounded. The small town of Gunnison was stunned, but the story erupted far beyond Colorado. Newspapers nationwide carried photos and narratives of a mountain road that had exacted a terrible price. When investigators examined the wreckage, they found more than a brake failure. The bus's frame and roof structure had given way, side posts buckled, and the roof supports had collapsed. Safety reviews concluded the overall superstructure was too weak to protect passengers in a rollover. In response, new standards were adopted. School buses were built with stronger side posts, reinforced roof panels, and closer rivet spacing. 2-speed rear axles and hydraulic brakes were phased out of large buses in favor of sturdier designs and air brake systems. Colorado also introduced what was called rack and load tests to verify that a bus body could hold its shape under rollover stress. And what was a horrific tragedy and an unbearable loss became a turning point that reshaped school bus design. And in this small way, something good came from a very dark chapter in the legend of Monarch Pass. Kept at bay. For trekkers, Monarch Pass is well known. The east side drops more than 3,009 feet in just over 10 miles. The west side, 2,649 feet in 8.7 miles. Both sides hold steady to 6% grade, curve after curve. One stretch, about 3 miles west of the summit, is infamous for a hidden reverse curve posted at 35 miles an hour, where the skid marks tell the story of rigs that push too far. CDOT has long warned truckers about the risks on Monarch. Push too hard and brakes overheat fast. That's why runaway truck ramps climb into the trees, it appears, looking almost like afterthoughts until you notice the ruts from rigs that couldn't stop. Every driver who's eased a loaded rig down Monarch knows the drill. Stay in low gear, keep the brakes cool, and watch the speed. Push it, and Monarch will push back. And while the steep grades are plenty to contend with, the mountain also has horrific weather. The summit is a wind tunnel on the divide. In March 2016, an instrument there clocked a gust of 148 miles per hour, one of the strongest ever recorded on a highway in Colorado. Blizzards can blind a driver in seconds, erasing the road into white. But clearing the road seems like an act in futility. It's a daily activity. But it does stand to reason as the pass receives 350 inches of snow each year. Avalanches add another dimension of danger. For decades, CDOT crews hauled out howitzers and fired shells at the slopes to bring snow down before it buried the road. Today, propane-filled Gazex exploders are fixed to the mountainside, triggered remotely to release controlled slides with a roar that echoes across the divide. But even with modern technology, widened roads, weather station feeding real-time data, message boards flashing traction laws, and crews patrolling the grades, no one pretends that Monarch is safe. As one longtime plow driver put it, you never quite conquer Monarch, you just keep it at bay. Reflection on a silent giant. From the mule teams that rattled over a toll road in the 1880s to the modern highway engineered across the divide, Monarch Pass has challenged every generation that tried to cross it. In the 1930s, Charles Vale's highway crews carved a paved road over the summit, betting that modern machines could handle any ancient slope. In the decades since, Colorado has thrown everything at it just to keep it clear and safe for travelers. The pass has seen miracles like the brakeless bus that made it into Salida in 1950. It's delivered heartbreak like the 1971 crash that shook a town and rewrote national safety standards. It has tested truckers, families, and anyone who dared to take it on. At the summit, where a weathered sign marks the Continental Divide, rivers split to the Atlantic and the Pacific. Travelers and tourists take a chance to pause and catch their breath in the thin air. Even if it's not said aloud, it's hard not to feel respect, not just for the mountain, but for the sheer audacity it took to build a road across it in the first place. More than a century on, Monarch still reminds us how daring that choice was. Engineered but never truly tamed, beautiful but unforgiving. Way up high on the Continental Divide, Monarch stands as a silent giant, still daring us to make the climb. We want to thank you for watching this video on the Monarch Pass. Maybe you've got your own Monarch Pass story that you'd like to tell us. If so, leave it in the comments. We're definitely active there. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. It helps it go further on YouTube. And if these are the kind of stories that you enjoy, why don't you go ahead and join us by subscribing to the channel? We'd love to have you on the Beyond the Exit caravan. You know, we like telling stories from the road that move us. A lot of their history is hiding in plain sight, just waiting to be rediscovered. As always, we appreciate you being here. Thanks for watching, and God bless.